to event season. Are you looking for some quick tips and tricks on how to maximise your presence at these medical device events? Welcome to the Medical Device Marketing Podcast. I'm Jenna, a content marketing manager in the medical device space, and today I'm joined by Becca, an account manager who spent the first part of her career travelling around the globe and attending medical device events and helping companies to make their mark. So, welcome, Becca.
Hi Jenna, it's excited to talk about events today.
Good. You know a lot about events, obviously. That was, first part of your career, and you've got a lot to say about them, so let's jump in. Should we just start by discussing what type of events there are in the medical device space and, the events that we'll be focusing on today?
Yeah, so I think there's kind of three main types in my mind. One is like your big exhibition events, which have like thousands of delegates at it, and it really is more about the exhibition floor, like what booths people have, what demos people are doing, and it's more sort of product led. Then the step maybe down in size from that is conferences, which can either be association led or company led or like events that I used to Informa, which are sort of done by a third party, and that will be more agenda knowledge based. You'll still have your stands, you'll still have like an exhibition floor, but the primary reason of going is to get kept up to date with industry knowledge, to learn the latest clinical data, hear from regulators, and then your lunchtime is spent networking. Then your last one is like your more local events, which tends to be sort of people going with maybe tabletops and banners, and it's really, really knowledge focused. And they tend to happen, inside hospitals or really local, maybe 4 or 5 sponsors, and then the rest are just doctors and clinicians who are watching case studies either actually in a theatre or it's like a projection into a classroom. But they tend to be much smaller and more niche, but also very useful events.
Cool. So what do you see as being the usual approach that companies take at these events?
Yeah, so I think the approach, if we focus on like the big ones for first, is actually at all of them is we'll just turn up with the stand or with the tablecloth, and that'll be it. And we'll have a sales rep there, and they'll talk to everybody. They'll just collect their names. That's all we need to do. And I think there was a time that did work. But if you look at the big events, you could be exhibiting with 200 other companies. They are all going to have their sales reps there. So that doesn't work anymore. Or if you look at the small events, people aren't going to come over to your stand when it's just a tabletop unless there's some reason for them to. So unless there's a content that you're giving out or you really have value add because you're pulling them away for some really great talks, that's really why they're there. So it's how you need to do more than that. But I think that is traditionally the approach. We'll turn up, we'll have a few flyers, we'll have a pull-up banner, and it will all work out great. In reality, that normally means that people leave feeling disappointed and feeling like the event didn't work. And in some cases, that's the case. The event hasn't been done right. But in the majority of the cases, if you've just turned up hoping for the best, it's a lack of planning has meant that you've not got the most out of that event.
So what would you say to those people who haven't got what they wanted out of the event? Like, what can they do next time to make sure that their stand is the one that stands out? How can they, differentiate themselves from everyone else there?
Yeah, it's a really good question because it's something that I always talk about on every podcast is about what's your goal at the event. So, as in with all marketing, it always comes back to what your objective is. And, if your objective is brand awareness, then your booth needs to be the biggest. Your booth needs to have the best place on the floor, which is normally wherever the food is or wherever the drinks are. That's where your stand should be. It needs to have some sort of engagement feature that makes people want to come over, whether it's VR, whether it's coffee, whether it's champagne, cookies, like whatever it is to pull people in. But if your objective is leads, then you need to have something that makes people want to give you their contact information. Is it that you've brought a really great piece of content and you're going to email it to them afterwards because you've shown them a snippet on the stand? Is it that you've got a great QR code piece of content and they've got to scan that code, and I'm reluctant to say that you should scan everybody's badge that comes to your booth, because some of them are there for the ice cream. It's about getting qualified leads at this event, and the best way of doing that is having really great content at your event, and having your sales reps really know what content's on their website, so you can really hold conversations and collect better data that way. Or if your objective is for thought leadership, do you have a speaker sponsored in the agenda? Like, is your KOL speaking? If not, next year get your KOL speaking, presenting your clinical data. Are you doing workshops after the event? Are you doing dinners? Are you doing drinks? The events normally run 9 to 5, networking drinks for an hour. They're over at 6. People have travelled for them. When else are you going to have 60 or 70 doctors in your area in the same city? Use that, put drinks on, put a dinner and learn event on, and really use the fact that they're all in the same place to have a really great meeting with them. Sometimes you don't even need to, actually a lot of the time, you don't even need to present any data, because I think I said this on a previous podcast, if you've organised a really great event in London and doctors have been to it, when your sales representative goes into that hospital the next time, they're going to remember you for that really great party that you threw for them, and then that just breaks the ice. It's all relationship building. So yes, it's maybe not a tangible lead at the end of it, but it just helps on that journey of converting somebody to using your device.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like events aren't really something that should just be considered an isolated event. There's a lot leading up to it, and there's a lot of other marketing campaigns that can feed into it. So for lead generation example, it's not just at the event, you've got the QR code that goes to a web page or a piece of content, so all that needs to be created beforehand. So there's a whole journey there. So it's quite interesting to think about that it's not just an event, it's a whole campaign with a beginning, a middle, and an end.
It's exactly that. I think all marketing activities none of them should be done in isolation. And I think events for me are the ones that normally are done in isolation, because people just see them as this one-off big event, where actually they should be fitting into your campaign. Some of the best practice that I see is people plan to launch data at a flagship event in their industry, and I always think that's a good idea, because you've got all of their peers there, all of the main doctors in that area. They're going to be there listening to that data, and that's really important to launch it there. And quite a lot of the time, so that takes planning. If you're doing a 12-month study or a 2-year study, you need to plan to start and finish it and write the paper for that event. You can't decide 3 weeks before you're going to the event, I need a study to present. That's not how it works. So I think all of that requires planning, and and that's how you make the most out of events, is that you put them in to your campaign, and also decide if you want to go to an event. Some events you have to go to from a brand presence perspective, but if the event's in Q3 and you've not doing any, I don't know, it's about one of your indications that's more for secondary indication, and you've done nothing in the market, no marketing for that indication for the last 6 months, you have to ask yourself, unless this is a launch and the start of that campaign, why are you going to it? Because if you've done nothing on that indication for 6 months, you turn up for 1-2 day event and then do nothing on that indication afterwards, you spent a hell of a lot of money on 2 days and probably got nothing out of it. So it's about making sure that before and after that event fits into that marketing strategy.
Nice, really interesting stuff. So other than the stands, which we've spoken about quite a lot, what else do you think that companies could be doing to maximise their events presence?
Yeah, I think it's about getting on the agenda, but doing it right. So nobody wants to be sold to. And I have sat in many, many, many sessions where they say, this is not a pitch, we're not pitching. And about 3 seconds in, you're like, oh no, this is a pitch for the next 30 minutes. And nobody is listening. They've all turned off. You can see them all on their emails. So if you get on the agenda, it's about presenting some really great clinical data, or it's about really talking about a topic that's really interesting for your audience, things that they actually want to know and can take away from and be like, that talk from that company really helped me. That's what you want to be putting on the agenda. You don't want to use it as a time to talk about the features of your device, because there's a time and a place for that. And I've been at some events where they do have like a product showcase or product highlights or like an OR where people can go in and use your device. That's when you should be pitching, because when people come into that scenario, like a device spotlight, they're expecting to be pitched to, and actually they probably want to be pitched to because they've gone to it. So again, it's about making sure you put the right content in the right place and make sure you're a part of that. Your event provider, whether it's an association or a company, will have a list of sponsorship options. Agendas will be going on there, spotlights will be going on there. There'll be loads of other things on there, like lanyards and stuff. I don't really know if they make the biggest difference in my mind. I feel like content stuff always works better. But from a brand perspective, there's some great options on there. And then the main thing after that is all of the after event activities, making sure you have workshops, making sure you have dinners, as all stuff that I'd recommend as well.
Okay, finally, before we sign off, what would you say are some of the biggest mistakes that you see at events? What are some things that people should be looking out for?
Yeah, I think picking a bad stand. I think people, there are pricings with stands. So normally in a lot of events you see sort of bronze, silver and gold packages, but still like have a look at the floor plan and look like, are you put in the back corner? Because in reality, no one's coming down there. So make sure you've picked a good spot. And then also, you are at the event, be at the event. I've been at loads where you walk around the floor and the sales team are answering emails or they're on the phone. And it's like, some stand presence can cost you sort of upwards of 10 grand and your sales team aren't using it. And that doesn't happen all the time. I do see it every now and again. So yeah, make sure that you've cleared your diary, you're at the event versus trying to also, be clearing emails. And then I'd say lastly, it's about the biggest mistake is not having it as part of your overall strategy, because events are a great opportunity to speak to lots of different people, and if you don't have your messages set and really clear content of what you want to be presenting to people, it's just a wasted opportunity. So yeah, I'd say those are the three biggest mistakes that I see at events all the time.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you for joining us today, Becca, and thank you for all the amazing knowledge you shared. I think it's been really interesting. I'm sure the listeners at home would agree. If you'd like any more information on medical device marketing in general, you can head over to our YouTube channel or our Learning Hub and our website. We have loads of articles on there, and there's more podcasts you can listen to, lots of them featuring Becca. So yeah, thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, Hannah.